Hello, everyone. This is Sam from SaberiSixRealEstate, as well as Remax Realtron, Realty Inc. I'm here with my colleague and my good friend, Ali Mosadeq from... What's funny about that, man?
I don't know why.
Anyways.
Ali, go ahead. Continue.
From the Home Investors team and as well as Remax Realtron, Realty Inc. Ali, we're here with the podcast. Tell the people about what they can expect.
Listen, sorry for laughing earlier. I'm just not used to people mentioning my last name. I don't know. It sounds funny to me. My apologies, although there's nothing funny about my last name. It's rather silly of me. But yes, I am a broker with Remax. I work at the same office as Sam does. And tell them about myself. Jeez, I don't have a 2-minute or 30-second elevator pitch.
It's really good because neither do I. But so what we should tell them is what to expect before we get into today's topics, right?
What to expect. Okay, so this podcast, Sam and I have been talking about this for a while now, and we've always been interested in creating a podcast just because we're both very talkative people. We do kind of have opposing viewpoints, so it's going to be a interesting discourse over these podcasts, but we want to put this together just to discuss what's happening in real estate in the GTA, discuss buyers, sellers, listing properties, negotiating, just anything really that has to do with real estate, how the market's doing, and what we see, what we experience really.
That's true.
And in real estate and you know how we're progressing our individual careers. So this is at least what I think this podcast is going to be about. Anything you'd like to add to that, Sam?
No, I think you made a good explanation. All I will add is hopefully along the way we tell some funny stories. We just hang out, chill a bit, and then also as well talk about other related business matters, not just real estate, in terms of maybe finance and any news in business in terms of stocks, so on and so forth.
Women.
But yeah, we're gonna. Sorry. No, I think we're gonna steer away from that topic of conversation. But yeah, we're just going to be very casual about it. And we don't want it to be too boring, but at the same time, we are professionals. So we're not going to be swearing up and down this podcast, right?
I can't make promises, but I will try.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Well, if you're hearing this on YouTube or Apple's iTunes podcast, wherever you are, if you're on iTunes, please subscribe. Leave a rating. Be honest with your rating. You know, in my opinion, constructive feedback always makes you better. And if you're listening to this on YouTube, please subscribe. Leave a comment. Once again, tell us what we can do better. If there is anything you want us to talk about. And just subscribe and leave a like.
We would appreciate that very much. And as Sam said, your feedback would be greatly appreciated so we know how we can improve on our podcast. And really talk about things that you're interested in hearing so we don't just ramble off about things that are not relevant to you or to your interests. But, so what do we want to talk about? We want to talk about the current state of the real estate market?
So I thought a good place to start with this is something I experienced this previous Saturday, actually. Which is buyer showings, right?
Okay.
And since this whole COVID-19 situation started, it's been interesting to go into houses, units for sale, to see potential properties for my buyers. Now,
have you been dealing a lot with those COVID forms?
Yeah, exactly.
The disclosure forms.
That's one thing I wanted to talk about. Another thing I want to talk about is going through the concierge, because I've actually had a lot of unfamiliar experiences during this COVID. But before I get into my story, have you had any particular experiences that?
My clients have been pretty good for the most part. I've had some interesting encounters, to say the least. At some of the condo concierge, yes.
So are your buyers looking for condos or just
I have
anything?
buyers looking for houses as well as condos. With the houses, we've been asked not to touch anything. Don't open a fridge. Don't touch the drawers. A whole slew of things where you literally just walking through, hands in your pockets, and you're just looking. which I understand from the seller's perspective and the agent's perspective, and even, you know, for my clients wanting to remain safe and really not pass on anything to the homeowners or leave anything behind in terms of the virus. But at the same time, it's hard to really check out a property, because if you open up the drawers, you want to know in the kitchen if there's soft closed drawers, right? If the agent doesn't include that in the description, it's hard to tell. So these are some features or some.
You guys don't wear gloves?
I personally, I don't. I bring what's gonna call it, that solution.
Purell?
Purell hand sanitizer. I have that in the car. So in and out, before I go in and out, I use hand sanitizer. But even then, they still, you know, don't want you to.
So here's the thing, man. Generally speaking, outside of COVID, like visiting houses for sale, so semi-detached, detached, just like freehold properties, even like outside of this COVID situation, that in itself is easier anyways, right?
Yeah.
With condos, bro, sometimes you have to go to the concierge. Sometimes you have to go into the parking lot. Sometimes it's outside on a fence.
Yeah.
And like a lot of agents, if I can say, are not very smart about the directions they give, right? Like, no, I'm not trying to throw any.
No, 100%
because when I have a listing, like especially in a condo, I literally in my confirmation emails, I put like the most detailed message about where they can find the lockbox, right?
And that's appreciated by all agents, because it's the worst thing to get is a confirmation where it says black lockbox and stairwell.
And there's like 5 of them.
And there's like 5. That would be great. I've
20.
seen 40, 50, 60. And it's like black lockbox. I'm supposed to go around and try the combination on every lockbox? Come on. You kind of, that's... I'm going to bite my tongue and just say that it's a lazy agent. So let's just leave it at that.
So my point is, though, like outside of that, like once again, outside of the COVID context, it's a headache as it is.
Yeah.
At the same time, I don't want to sound like, you know, we do the hardest job in the world. Like our jobs are difficult in certain senses, but definitely finding a lockbox in a condominium building is preferable over, but it's still like, even though it can be a headache, it's still preferable over like shoveling coal in a coal mine. You know, like I can't complain that much.
Absolutely. But a little bit of just common sense on the part of the listing agent should make that entire process so much easier. Like it shouldn't be hard. It really shouldn't be hard.
Well, at times though, to be fair, like you're working with the condominium corporation's rules, right? Like you have to put it at a certain spot sometimes. Like you can't just freeball it. So point being though, during COVID though, this process has become especially, annoying in a sense, because you, like you said, you have to fill out a COVID form, right? Which they're not, I hate to break it to you, they're not taking that seriously. They say they just PDF email you a form, or it's on the listing, and they say, ask you a few questions. Have you been outside the country? Has your clients have been outside the country? Have they been feeling any fever-like symptoms? So on and so forth, right? And all you have to do is type your name, type in the date of the showing, and the property address.
Right.
You don't have to really get it signed and get a like legal confirmation from your client and yourself that what you're attesting to is true.
Some of them are asking you to sign it, but in any event, like, I mean, hey, let's be honest. A lot of people can lie about that.
Yeah.
But that aside, like, I mean, if my client is showing symptoms and they have a fever, or not even a fever, but they have shortness of breath, or they have the COVID symptoms, they're not going out to look at properties. Like, let's be honest.
No, that's
right?
for a fact, yeah.
Even
if they wanted to, I would say no.
Right, of course. If my client said, listen, I'm sick, I think I have COVID, or I do know I have COVID, I'm like, all right,
I'll send you an email.
Stay at home. I'm not taking you out to go do a showing. And more than likely, they don't want to go out and do a showing because they want to rest and get over the illness. So that in itself, to me, like, I think it's just really to cover themselves. It's more of like an insurance.
Exactly. Just to cover their bases.
Exactly. Like, have you been out of the country? The airports are pretty much closed. They're not closed, but nobody's flying anywhere. You're not traveling for leisure, and there's not as much business going on in terms of, I don't know. In any event, I understand why they have to do it.
Yeah. But once you fill out that form, then my experience, because my buyers are looking exclusively at condominiums, right?
Okay.
And not even like low-rise condominiums. They're looking at high-rise condominiums, right? So we have to fill out that form. And the reason I make this distinction is because going to houses is much simpler. Like you just, the lockbox is usually right at the front door or on the side, wherever, right? But so I've been going with my buyers. This previous Saturday, I was at Mississauga. We were looking at properties in Mississauga. The week before that, we were in Richmond Hill, right? I've been filling out these forms, and then going into the actual building is not that tricky, but a lot of concierge have been taking my temperature. I don't know. Have you experienced that?
No, that I haven't experienced.
So I went, typically for people who don't know, typically what the process is, if the lockbox is with the concierge or at the stairwell close to the unit or in the parking lot, you have to go through the concierge, right? So you just sign in your name, you leave your business card, they ask for your recall number, and then you go up. So I go with my buyer, and I'm doing the normal thing. I'm signing my name in, time in, my name, the company I work for. And then from the corner of my eye, as I'm looking down, filling out this form, I see a black box-like thing being erected towards my face. Okay? So I'm still looking down. Filling out this form. And I just reach out because typically what that shape is a lockbox.
Right.
And I reach out and I don't get anything in my hand and it's still in that same spot. I look up and it's literally like a gun. It's literally a gun. This concierge is holding a gun to my face, and it takes me 2 seconds to realize what's happening.
You ask for your money?
No, it wasn't that. I literally went through my head for 2 minutes, for 2 seconds.
Taser pointed at your
It looks like a taser. But it's one of those things where you just point at someone's forehead and it takes their temperature.
Yeah. No, I get it.
So that's it. Go ahead. What?
So he didn't ask you for permission or say, hey,
no,
I'm just going to take your temperature?
No.
Literally just pointed it at your forehead.
Yeah.
Was the guy from a different planet? Where does it come from?
Well,
the manners.
Well, I might edit this part out, but the funniest part was looking up and seeing his little head wrap because he was Indian and he was holding a gun to my face. But anyways, I think I'm going to edit this part out. I'm not lying, man. That was hilarious. Anyways, so that was a funny experience I had. I don't know. Have you had any unusual experiences?
Not like that.
Yeah.
All I've had really is concierge asking me to use the antibacterial, and then they put the key 6 feet away from the concierge desk. It's like they have a separate desk designated for leaving things on there for people either to pick up their parcels or to pick up keys in this case. So he went there, dropped it off, and then he said you can grab the keys from there. Mm-hmm. And then upon return, I put the keys back there, and then he went to pick them up. And that was their protocol. One of them actually told me that when I got there, the guy said, we're not doing any showings. You're not allowed to in the unit. I'm like, that can't be possible because I got confirmation. He's like, no, we're not allowing it. So I had to go back and forth.
This was the concierge?
Yeah. And then I was like, listen, go ask property management. Mm-hmm. Like if they're not allowing showings in the condo, then property management would be telling agents that you can't do that, and then they would put that in the listing instructions and all of that. So then he went to his property management. The guy came out and he's like, yeah, I just got to give you guys the showing protocols, like the instructions. I was like, okay, what's that? Like, are you sick? Are you showing symptoms? So he asked me those same questions I've already filled out in the form. And then he's like, just stay 6 feet apart. I'm like, geez, thanks. Haven't heard of that yet.
Yeah.
It's been all over the news and, the government and everyone's been saying it left, right, and center. I'm pretty aware of what the protocols are to stay 6 feet apart. And that was literally it. And then I was like, okay, great, thank you. And so we went.
Are your buyers okay? Because another thing people might not know is when we as realtors take people to showings, our buyers, sometimes the unit, whether it's a house or a condo, whatever it is, it's vacant, so there's no furniture. It's vacant but furnished or staged rather. Mm-hmm. It's tenanted. It's occupied by the owner. There's many different types of combination. So me personally, I'll let Ali speak on this in a sec. Me and my buyers, we're just exclusively going to properties that are vacant.
Oh,
we're not going into any tenanted properties or occupied properties. We're going to vacant properties, which in a way limits our options, right? Mm-hmm. So what about you? Have you been going into vacant and tenanted and occupied properties, or?
Yeah, we haven't really filtered for vacant properties. One of my clients was she was looking to rent, so we were looking for actually furnished units. Mm-hmm. So she wanted to rent a furnished condo. So I was actually specifically looking for.
She was looking to rent?
Yeah.
Oh.
So we found her one. We got a great deal on it, and then the rest, the other clients, they're looking to buy, and we were looking at all sorts of properties. Some were vacant, some were furnished, some were occupied, some were not. But we brought gloves. Well, they brought gloves that had antibacterial, and then we all had masks. So they weren't too concerned with that because we brought the appropriate gear with us. And then in some properties, actually, I noticed that the agents or the homeowners had left little, I guess, booties or whatever they call them, shoe covers.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, and then we put those on our shoes, and which is actually a pretty good idea, and I think I might actually do that. They have these new little machines where it's kind of like a big tissue box, and you put your foot into it.
Yeah, I've seen those, yeah.
And then it just
it's like slippers almost.
Yeah, it wraps this plastic cover around your shoes. And for listings, I might actually start doing that because I find it a lot more convenient for people to just step on that, cover their shoes and walk through the property, and then come out and take them off rather than taking their shoes on and off. That, I've noticed sometimes where people come in, especially in the wintertime, they make a mess as they're taking their shoes on and off right by the door. So I think this might be an actual pretty good alternative. Anyways.
So how many buyers are you working with right now?
At
a serious level, like where you're looking, you're going to showings?
Going to showings, 2 currently.
2?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm working with one, or rather 2 people, but one set of buyer. And they're not comfortable with going to tenanted properties or occupied ones.
Really, yeah?
And I'm not going to, pretend. I'm more comfortable with that myself personally, right?
Okay.
Because some people you don't know, you can't depend. Definitely not, occupied properties where there are people in it while you're showing it, right? That's even outside of COVID, that's even worse. But
usually people are supposed to vacate the property. That's
I've had that so many times where I go with my clients to show to see a property and the seller is home.
Right now during COVID?
No. I'm saying outside of COVID. Yeah,
I know. No. Yeah, I've experienced that as well.
But I'm saying that's even right even now, if there was
COVID, most people are vacating their properties.
Yeah. But I'm saying even in a case where there is no disease, and everything is normal, the seller being home is still not ideal.
Oh, for sure. You can't, I don't like that either.
Because you always have to ask, can we go upstairs to your master? Is that okay with you? Where it should be okay, because we're seeing it. My client wants to make the biggest purchase of his life, so you better be able to see the master. Right?
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Yeah. That's I'm not a big fan of that when homeowners stay home. It's kind of it's awkward and weird because then neither one of them are comfortable. Clients are not comfortable to actually check out the property the way they're supposed to and make comments and ask questions. And then, especially if the seller starts following you around, which has happened.
Really?
Yeah, it's like, okay, this is, I don't need a chauffeur to walk me around the property. And it seems like you have either something to hide or you don't trust us that we're going to steal something. It's just kind of awkward and weird.
So, anyways, those are my thoughts. And it's like weird times to show properties, but you still have to do it, right?
You gotta do
there's
what you
no
gotta do
choice.
Is,
So another thing we thought we would talk about, Ali actually wanted to really focus on, was the market stats for this previous month, released by Treb.
Right.
Now, if people are not familiar, while I give Ali to pull them up, basically every month, once that month has elapsed, Treb releases all the pertinent and relative market stats that are important in terms of real estate in Toronto and the greater Toronto area. So we're talking about the average sold price, for instance, of a semi-detached home. And what the comparison is, and a lot of people don't know this. Let's say, for example, we're talking about the month of April 2020. They compared the stats for April 2020, not to the preceding month before April, but they compare it to April of 2019.
Right.
So it's not a month to month within the same year comparison. It's the same month annual comparison. So they're comparing the market stats, year over. Comparing the stats of April 2020 versus April 2019, right?
Right.
So anyways, Ali.
Well, I mean, they compare, year over year, which gives you some indication as to how the market is doing year over year, but it doesn't really tell you much how the market is doing within the year and if there's any fluctuations on a month-to-month basis. However, I do make comments regarding that, when I post the information on my Instagram account. And then lately what I've also been doing, because COVID has really, it impacted the market quite substantially, but in the beginning stages. So what I've been doing is I've been breaking it down on a 2-week basis. And so the pre-COVID and then the post-COVID. And the pre-COVID was March 1st to the 15th. And then everything else after that on a 2-week basis. So it's March 16th to the 30th, April 1st to the 15th, 16th to the, I think there's 30 days in April. In any event, etc., etc. So going on like that, and I've been tracking that, posting that on Instagram as well. And obviously the pre-COVID era or time period just before we went into quarantine was the highest. What the market.
And where would you put that at? I personally think to really understand, you should look at May 15th and onwards. I really do think if you're looking at the effects, I actually made a video on this on my personal YouTube channel, SaberiSixRealEstate. feel free to go and subscribe. But I made a video about how, at least at the time, a lot of realtors were using May stats to say, oh, look, COVID didn't really impact the market all that much, right? And in the video, I explained that what they're doing is they're using May stats to say it didn't impact the market that much, because May stats are a little misleading.
Right.
Because May 1st to May 15th, although COVID was an international story, people were not taking it that seriously.
You mean March or May?
March, rather. I apologize. March.
I was like, where are you going?
Yeah.
Okay.
March. So March 1st to March 15th, people were not taking COVID that seriously. That's why if you look at March stats, a bulk of the transactions occurred before the 15th, where the government shutdown was installed, where most businesses closed, where the market slowed down significally.
Absolutely.
Right?
So that's kind of the benchmark is what you're saying.
So I think, if you're really looking at, personally, I think if you're looking at stats and how the impact of COVID, whether it was negative or positive, and if you want to determine that based on the stats, you should look at March 15th and onwards.
Well, yeah. So, once again, if you're comparing on a 2-week period, then comparing, you want to know what the numbers were before we went into quarantine, and then quarantine started March 16th, and we're still technically in the quarantine.
Yeah.
So we want to see on a 2-week basis how that 2 weeks is doing compared to March 1st to the 15th.
And that's the point I made in the video, is that if you look at the 2 weeks before March 15th, once again, the bulk of the transactions occurred in that first 2 weeks, which made
1,600 to be exact. Yeah. 1,660 units sold between March 1st to March 15th.
And if you look at 15th to 30th, that was a significant drop off.
600, 1,027 is what sold from March 16th to the 30th. So about 600 units fewer sold in that second half of March.
Exactly.
Absolutely. So the number of transactions definitely dipped. And then April 1st to the 15th, it was you could see dust balls rolling down Toronto, because it went down to 461 transactions, which is a huge drop. And then things started to pick up after that point. The second half of April, numbers were up a little bit, and so forth and so forth. So, the one thing that, the transactions are down. However, the prices weren't substantially down. Like, it's not like they dropped. I've heard so many rumors. Someone messaged me and said, I heard from this real estate agent that markets are going to drop by 20%. I'm like, oh, really? He must have a crystal ball. Mm-hmm. Good for him. What is he predicting for the stock market?
Yeah,
Can
whenever
he tell me his other
sorry to interrupt, but whenever agents really give like that, those types of predictions with like 100% certainty, I get a little suspicious because
just throw that out the window, in my opinion.
I personally know that like it's so hard to make accurate assumptions about the Toronto quote unquote market, right? Mm-hmm. What you should be really focusing on is making accurate assumptions about Mississauga, about like a community within North York, or Richmond Hill. Like, if you focus your lenses down more specifically,
right,
I think your assumptions would be more so accurate, because it's hard. It's basically what I'm trying to say is, I feel like a lot of realtors look at, which is a discussion for another time, but they always assert XYZ about Toronto market, which they should, but they should focus more on, their specific areas. Your focus has to be more microscopic in that sense.
Well, okay, I agree with you, but everyone's going based off of averages, right?
Yeah.
So, when we're talking about right now, I have Toronto average and I have York region average, right? So I have both of them, in my posts, and then that's my 2-week analysis. And then I also post a monthly. And once again, they bring it down to 416 and 905. 905 being pretty much all the 905. So it's not very accurate if you live in the 905, because you have York Region, Durham, Peel, and all these other areas. So they aggregate all of that as a 905. So if you live in Durham and, the average prices in Mississauga are going up, but Durham is going down, it doesn't give you an accurate depiction of what's happening in your localized area. So I 100% agree with you. Real estate is a local issue. It's a local matter. And if you live in Mississauga, looking at averages in Toronto doesn't matter. Even within Mississauga, you have different communities. Or let's talk about Richmond Hill. You have North Richville, South Richville, Baby Hill. You have Westbrook. You have all of these different areas. Now, what's happening in South Richville, if you live in Westbrook or Baby Hill, you don't really compare those two neighborhoods. It doesn't make sense. So if you want to know what's happening in your area and you live in Baby Hill, you compare Baby Hill. If you live in Crosby, you compare the properties in Crosby. And likewise Westbrook, and so on and so on. But I think people always talk in averages and they speak high-level numbers because it's easier, to remember that, and to kind of give an indication of where or how the market is trending, but it certainly is no specific. It's not going to give you an accurate depiction of what's happening in your local area.
I just think sometimes you lose your specificity when you just focus on a large. When you go to averages are good for a reason, but sometimes you lose your specificity, right? If, for example, if we say like in Toronto. Just as an example, right? In the month of May, prices of detached homes were up 20%, right? For instance, right? Compared to May of the preceding year, right? How do I know that 20% increase is not due to detached homes for instance, in Etobicoke? Like the bulk of that increase is due to the price of homes in Etobicoke going up. Whereas in another area, for instance, let's say Toronto CO7, which is around the Yonge and Steeles area, that hasn't been increased that much. But this is just
you're elaborating more on what I said.
Exactly. Areas, right? I'm not. But anyways, agree with you. So let's get back on topic here. Any interesting observations about the most recent month's stats?
Well, transactions are down by 53%, but so are the number of listings. What I found interesting in that the days on market are up. Last year took
days on market, right? Yeah. Can you explain that to the people?
So days on market means how long it takes for a property to sell from the date that it's listed to the day that it's sold firm, not conditional, because conditional days are still counted as days on market, because that deal could fall through and then it's still an active listing and they can get another offer. So the sold firm date. And last year it took about 19 days to sell a property in the month of May. This year it took 24 days. Now usually there's a correlation between the days on market and the selling price. Usually the longer the property sits on the market, the more there is a perception that it's gotten stale, there's something wrong with the property.
Less the seller is willing to accept.
Exactly.
But this is, once again, I want to be clear, this is on average, right? This is typical.
Absolutely, it's an average. It's not an accurate, like every property is different, every situation is different.
Yeah.
There's, you have some multi-million-dollar properties that will be on the market for 90, 120, 200 days, but those are bigger deals that are a lot more intricate, they're a lot more sophisticated, and they take more time to sell because it takes a certain kind of buyer to come around for that. So they also affect the days on market. But when we're talking about, 19 or 20 days or 24 days, usually I think the bulk of those that bring that number down to such a low amount are townhouses, semis, and detached at, 1.5 million or less. And those generally sell within a much quicker time frame than, larger properties or properties that actually have some defects. You have vacant land that's sitting on the market for 300 days sometimes, and that's because it takes a builder or an investor to come and buy that vacant land and develop it into something that somebody would want to buy with a nice house on it. In any event, like I said, there's a correlation between the selling price and
days on market.
Usually the longer it's on the market, the lower the price drops, or it sells usually for a lower price compared to asking.
So was that reflected in this month's stats?
Actually, no, it hasn't, which is comforting for homeowners. It might take you a little bit longer to sell, but the days on market were up, but so was the average selling price, up by 3%. So, it might take you a little bit longer to sell your property, but it doesn't mean that you're going to sell your property at a discount. At least in the month of May, that was the case. Prices didn't drop. They were actually 3% higher than the month of May of 2019. So I found that interesting. Number of listings are down. Sorry, I should turn off the ringer on my phone. Number of listings are down, and so are the number of transactions. They've also dropped by about 53%. And otherwise, in the 416, all property types are up. The average price of
so semi-detached,
detached, semis, towns, and condos, they're all up from this time last year. So when you look at that, COVID, everyone was expecting COVID to really hit the market hard and that numbers would drop below last year. That actually hasn't been the case. We're not...
Now, do you think the argument can be made if it wasn't for COVID, we would not see the 3% increase? Maybe we would see a 5% increase.
Absolutely. Or
6%. So maybe just because, and I'm not saying you're saying this, but just to be clear for people, just because it's up 3% does not necessarily mean that COVID did not have an effect. It just means the effect was not into the negative realm.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, you're absolutely right. I actually think if it wasn't for COVID, we would have had probably one of the hottest spring markets that we've ever had. Oh. Yes, because, comparing like March, the first half of March compared to the first half of March of like 2017, which was considered the height of the market, the numbers exceeded that. So I thought, come April, May, June, we would have had some record-breaking numbers. And I think COVID gave people that are on the sidelines a bit of a break to get into the market, because I think the average prices would have been higher. I think, we would be seeing prices higher than what we're seeing today.
And what about any particularly, because right now, once again, I'm very much so in the condo mindset right now, because all my buyers are looking for condos. Mm-hmm. Anything in particular with regards to the average price of condos?
Condos in a 416 are up by 5%.
Yeah,
over last year.
See, that's the thing. Before COVID kicked in, two of the properties we sold were condos, right? And literally the closings were right before the shutdown of the government, right? So we're talking about
416 or 905?
416.
Okay.
Right? And the condo market was super hot.
Yes.
Like I'm talking about central location, obviously.
Yeah.
But it was super hot. So 2 of the properties we had, we got multiple offers on both, right? And they stay on the market for 2 to 5 days at most, right? So it's interesting how even now that COVID, at least from my understanding, the brunt of it has elapsed. The condo market is somewhat bounced back a bit because, as you said, it was 5% up, right? So
5% up over last year, yes.
Yeah.
But I think
it would have been higher if it wasn't.
It would have been higher, and the condo market did see a bit of a dip actually compared to all other property types during this COVID time period. So if your client sold, you said before COVID hit, they got lucky.
Yeah, like I said, it was crazy hot.
Yeah,
we were getting like offers
right,
left and right. Obviously, we put it at a lower asking price than market value to get offers, multiple offers. But we were getting really good offers, and all of them were firm too. Which is maybe another thing we should explain later in another episode. What firm versus
conditional.
Yeah. The terminology. So that's for the market stats. Now, Ali also wanted to discuss the new CMHC's...
the new rules, the CMHC rules?
Yeah.
Well, I think, CMHC recently has been making quite a bit of noise, and they came out with some pretty crazy numbers and predictions as to what's happening to the real estate market, that it's not going to recover until like the end of 2021, that housing prices are going to drop by like 18 or 20%. None of it which is true, because as we're looking at the numbers right now, they're stable and they're strong. And I think they just made up these crazy headlines for people to click on and read their stories and everything.
So what would be their incentive to do that?
To say essentially, oh, you don't believe us? Okay, we'll make it happen. Because CMHC...
What would be the incentive for them to make it happen?
Their incentive?
Why would they want to make that happen?
Because they came out with these headlines. They came out with all these predictions as to what's going to happen. And a lot of agents and a lot of...
Aren't you implying that they're doing that to kind of like shift the market artificially?
I think so, yeah.
So I'm just... My question is, and I think someone listening to this would ask, who's not familiar, would ask, well, why would the CMHC want to do that?
Because CMHC insures your mortgages below 20%. So in a way, they want to kind of, I guess, and they might say they want to protect buyers and they want to protect the amount of debt that Canadians take on and carry. And so that, and I would say more so to protect their own best interests, which is not paying out the mortgage company if a buyer does default on their mortgage and can't continue to pay their mortgage. Yeah. Right, because the insurance, CMHC insurance, doesn't insure the buyer. You and I know that it doesn't insure the buyer. It insures the lender, the person that's giving the mortgage. Giving the money for the mortgage, I should say.
Whether it's the bank, most cases.
Exactly. Yeah. So if I go out and buy a property, I buy with less than 20% down, and I need CMHC insurance, and then in a year I lose my job and I can't find another job for 6 months.
And you default on your payments.
I default on my mortgage. They essentially pay back, and they're the insurance company that pays back the lender whatever that's outstanding on the mortgage, should there be any shortfall in the amount that's owed and the amount they can sell the property on the open market. So I think it's more of their own best interests. Although they're meant to look out for Canadians, quote unquote. I don't necessarily believe that's always the case, but that's a different conversation for another day. In any event, they're making it more difficult for especially first-time home buyers to buy property.
Yeah.
So are you familiar with the different things? Like they're now saying with less than 20%, at least one of the borrowers needs to have a credit score of 680 or higher.
Above, yeah.
Right before 600.
Yeah.
So now they've increased that by 80 basis points, or not basis points, FICO credit score. So I think that's going to put a lot of people out on the sidelines.
Wait, I recall reading it was one of them.
That's one of them.
No, one of the buyers.
Yeah, just one of the buyers. So if you're an individual buyer.
Oh, okay. I thought you just said that like. I thought
no,
you
so
just.
If there's two buyers on
exactly
on
what I'm saying,
then at least one of them.
One of them needs to have 680. The other one can have. Obviously, it'd be better if the other one has 680, but they can have 650, 6.
Yes.
Yeah.
You can no longer borrow money to put down towards your down payment.
Yeah.
So essentially,
you can't take out a second loan basically just to make up the cash you need to put a down payment.
You need to
which
have your
a lot
savings.
Of private lenders are unhappy about now.
Right, exactly, right? So they're pushing those guys out of the business as well. And then
a lot of Persian people in the city are mad right now. I can say that because I'm Persian. But no, that's very much so true though. All joking aside, this has a negative impact. No, I'm not.
There's a lot of people.
That part was a joke. The non-joking part is that this is kind of negative for the business of private lenders.
Yes, absolutely. But it's not just private lenders. Like if you have a unsecured line of credit, you can't use that. I think the only borrowed money that you can use is like gifted money from your parents, right? They're not ruling out gifts, but other than that, like it's got to be money that you've saved or that is from
the pros. Like if you sold another property,
something like that,
or you sold a business,
non-borrowed funds. And then two other things that are going to affect a lot of people is the TDS ratio and the GDS ratio, and essentially those ratios determine how much money you can actually borrow, like how much of your income is going to be used towards servicing your debt. And especially the GDS ratio, they're bringing that down from 39. So the max is 39. It was 39, now it's 35, right? And the TDS, the max that used to be is 44, now it's 42. So if your ratios exceed 35 and 42, you're done. You're out of the market, right? So you got to either come up with a larger down payment. You gotta perhaps find another job, which might be difficult during the current times, where you have more income, so the ratios once again make sense, and you fall below 39, below 35 and 42. So they're just making it more difficult for people to get into the market, and I think it'll probably affect a lot of first-time home buyers more than anyone else.
Just to be fair to them, play devil's advocate for a second.
Oh, okay. Let's get into this.
It's not as if they're the one who is creating the cause, right? They're just anticipating the effect. So what I mean by that is they've obviously done their projections and their market analysis for the future, and they're predicting there's going to be a downturn in the market, right? And for that reason, they're just readjusting their thresholds and benchmarks right now just to be ready for the future, right? It's not as if they're purposely, or once again, being fair to them or playing devil's advocate.
You're being too fair.
Well, no, I mean, that's what on the surface they say, right? Even if you think they're manipulating the market, I'm not saying you use those words exactly, but roundabout way, if you think they're manipulating the market, their job isn't to do that on the surface, right? On the surface, they're just supposed to see what's coming and adjust in advance, correct?
Well, they've been doing that for quite a while now. And I think, I don't know if it's been to the benefit of the consumers. I see your points, but I don't really...
No, I'm not saying that's what they are doing. I'm just saying... Just so people have understanding, that's what they're supposed to do, right?
Well, I don't really know what their full mandate is. Like, I haven't gone to their website to see what their mission statement is.
Yeah.
You're probably right, but until I read what their actual mandate is, it's I even think the whole CMHC insurance, like, it's a heavy tax to pay for homeowners.
Yeah.
Especially because it doesn't insure homeowners.
Yeah, and keep in mind,
I've never been a fan of it.
This will also affect sellers as well, right?
Well, yeah, absolutely. With fewer buyers on the market, you can potentially see, properties on the market for longer, or an adjustment in prices to come down. But that's the point, though, right? That's what I'm trying. That was kind of.
No,
what
I
was
see where
alluding
you're
to,
coming
that
from. Yeah.
they're changing things in order to bring the prices down.
Yeah.
Like, the government has their hand in the market too much, too often. You need to, laissez-faire.
It's not even necessarily in a good way that they have their hands in the market, right? I don't think the market should be 100% unregulated, right? I think there should obviously be some benchmarks and thresholds for buyers, whether you're first time or a second time, whatever. I think buyers, you need to fit a certain amount of benchmarks and fit a certain criteria to be a buyer. If that was the case, anyone can get approved for anything.
That's what the stress test was about, and they had those ratios in place already, right? But they keep tweaking and changing the ratios. They keep changing the stress test, increasing the interest rate that you need to get qualified for, changing, down payments and all of that stuff. At one point, they said they wanted to take away the minimum 5% down payment, forcing buyers to put down 10% as a down payment for a property. So there's always these changes, and I don't really see how, because here's the thing: if people are not buying properties, they got to go into the rental market, right? And then that's just going to push up the rental market constantly.
Not necessarily, but that's
there's more demand in the rental market because people can't buy anything.
You're assuming that. What I mean is not necessarily is that you're correct that most likely that's what's going to happen, right? When there's less buyers, the rental market, they get filtered into the rental market, right?
Right.
But I could see many scenarios where there's a state of indifference, like nothing happens because they're already property owners themselves. They just don't sell at that moment to buy. You get what I'm saying?
I get that. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just trying to be clear as much as I can, just to say it doesn't necessarily mean just because there's a certain amount, just because there's fewer buyers, then all of those buyers go into the rental market. I think a lot of those buyers are current homeowners that just won't sell until things are more favorable for them.
Right. Okay, I get that. But that doesn't help the economy in any way. That doesnn't help further.
I'm not saying right? I'm not making an argument it's going to help the economy. I'm just clearing up what you said, because maybe some people who are not as well informed on this will think if you're not a buyer, then you're a renter. I'm saying there are other
no, for sure.
possibilities.
Yeah, I get it. I get that. But, those... this does affect, I think, first-time buyers.
For sure it
does.
This
is kind of geared towards them, because anyone that's selling their property already has some equity, and they can put down 20%. So this doesn't really...
You'd be surprised, but
yeah. No, I get it. Generally speaking.
Yeah.
Right? I'm sure there's people that don't buy with, their second or third property. They don't buy with 20%, maybe 10 or 15%.
Yeah.
In any event. This hurts the first-time home buyers that are trying to get into the market.
No, for sure, that's bad. It's bad for first-time home buyers,
right. And they're the ones that are being affected. And there's something constantly here, especially among the younger generation. It's nearly impossible to get into the market. I can't buy a home. I can't even buy a condo, right? And
just to be clear, people, he's saying I as another person.
Yeah, not me.
He's very wealthy. He's a very successful realtor.
No, I'm not wealthy by any means, thank you. No, but I'm just talking about, just people in our generation or younger generations that are trying to get into the market, and they're having difficulty because they keep changing the rules. They keep changing everything with regards to financing and whatnot, and they keep pushing these people out of the market. Meanwhile, it's not as difficult for someone that already has a home to move up the ladder.
Yeah. No, I agree. And that's the thing. I work with a lot of first-time home buyers. I don't know what your experience is.
Of course. I myself as well.
I work with, I would say 80% of the buyers I've worked with have been first-time home buyers. Mm-hmm. And luckily, thus far, I haven't had a bad experience in terms of my buyers not getting approved, or, their financing condition not being waived and then losing a deposit. Any of the potential barriers for first-time home buyers, I've been lucky enough not to experience those because I've had very, very qualified and good buyers, right?
Right. No, for sure. Those that are qualified,
Yeah.
For the most part, I haven't had that issue either with people that already are qualified. Which is everyone else that's looking to get qualified or has now started, they've become stable in their career and they've, saved some amount of money and now they're looking to, buy their first property. They no longer either want to live with their parents, live in a basement apartment or rent a condo. They want their own home and start building their own asset and their own, living. It's pushing those people out. It's not giving them much of a chance to get into the market. So I think, I don't know, I just feel bad. Because their changes or new policy, in my opinion, I don't think it's necessary at this point in time.
Yeah. So thanks for listening to us. This was the first episode. In the next episode, I think we're going to talk about something more evergreen, as they say. I think we're going to discuss what personally our ideal homes would be. Thanks for listening, and please subscribe, comment, rate, and review if you're watching this on YouTube. If not, if you're listening to this on iTunes or any other streaming service, please give us a subscription, give us a rating, and as always, as I say in my personal work, my work with Ali, I will continue to say, if you have any constructive feedback, if it's negative, we're open to hear that as well. So please provide your feedback. You can find my contact information in the description of this video on YouTube, as well as you can find my name and contact information on Realtor.ca. Ali, where can they find your contact information?
Well, in the description down below. You can also follow me on Instagram if you like. It's ali.realtor. That's on Instagram. I'm on Facebook as well, but I forget. Just look up my name, Ali Mosadeq, and that's Mosadeq. I'm on Realtor.ca. If you Google my name, you'll find all my information. That's really it.
Okay. Thank you, Ali. And this was the first episode of Above Asking. Until next time.
All right. Take care.
All right. Pause now.
Shit. Hold on.